What up, folks? What it do? Welcome to another episode of the Best Advice Ever podcast with your boy, Mike Goodwin. Bowtie, a.k.a. Bowtie Comedy. I need to talk about the a.k.a. Bowtie comedy part. However, as I was starting the intro, I really thought about, man, I missed the opportunity to wear my Santa hat. Wanted to wear my Santa hat. Don't get too many opportunities to wear it in an appropriate time and manner where you don't look out of place. This would have been a great time because this is the week of Christmas. Merry Christmas. I'm a Christian. I celebrate Christmas. Merry Christmas. Now, whatever you celebrate, get your celebration on. Whatever you subscribe to, keep subscribing. If you happy Hanukkah, if you are Merry Kwanzaa, if you are doing whatever it is that you're doing, keep doing your thing. But for me and my house, we over here rocking with Jesus and Christmas, right? Now, I typically start the podcast with it on the road, but I hadn't been on the road. I've been home. Interesting enough, this is a time period where a year ago I was under siege by damage in the same place that I'm shooting this podcast. A year ago, we had a pipe to burst inside of our office. It was a catastrophe. It was bad. So a year later, there's no call. I mean, I got a call. We're watching NBA basketball. Man, I had just made an 8-hour drive from Cleveland because we had gotten snowed in. All the flights had been canceled. It was Christmas Eve, which was Saturday. Christmas was clearly on Sunday. And me and my boy, Tim Sharpshire, drove from Cleveland. And then I dropped him off in Charlotte, and I brought it on to Columbia, South Carolina. So a year later, we don't have those issues. I haven't been on the road this year. And matter of fact, something that I didn't realize, I guess I do realize that I'm been blessed. And I guess you can look at, I'm a flex. I'm gonna give you a little small flex because this has been great. Like what I've been able to create, what God has given me the ability to do with this comedy, this keynote speaking, this speaker training, coaching has been amazing. And so I've been able to not have to be on the road for New Year's Eve. Now that's for a comedian. There are a handful of days that if you're a comedian, especially a comedian that does black churches, that you probably should be working somewhere, somehow. There's some days that like, hey, if you're a good comedian, one of those days, I think the biggest day is New Year's Eve service. Yeah, because in the African-American church tradition, or churches that have the majority of their membership that are melanated, something called Watch Night Service. Now, we have rebranded it, renamed it, called it New Year's Eve Celebration. It's Watch Night Service. Now, we can get into the details of what we were watching for, but the tradition of when people have a service going into the new year, Watch Night Service, right? And Watch Night Service, a New Year's Eve service, is very significant to me personally because I rededicated my life to the Lord at a New Year's Eve service. So it has a special place for me. And one of the things, if you're doing stand-up in churches, New Year's Eve service, if you can't work on these days, then you probably need to reevaluate what you got going on. New Year's Eve service is one. Anytime around Valentine's, like Valentine's Day, if you can't find yourself on a Valentine's Day banquet, dinner, something, you shooting bad out here. Mother's Day, pretty easy to get booked. Mother's Day. Father's Day, sometimes, but it's not as certain as Mother's Day. And Christmas, if you go through the whole month of December, and nobody had you at a Christmas party, a Christmas gala, a Christmas banquet, hey man, you need to take a look at what you got going on. Well, I have had the ability outside of doing New Year's Eve at my church a couple of years ago to not have to work on New Year's Eve. Like, and if I am going to work on if I'm going to do comedy on a New Year's Eve night, it's going to be the type of thing where people said, "Oh, they made me an offer I couldn't resist." Right? They made me an offer I just couldn't refuse. That's what's going to get me out, because it's a lot. It's a lot. Typically, it's late. It's far later than when I typically do stand up. Even if if I was, doing shows at the club, which I'm on the junior varsity scale right now. I'm on the junior varsity schedule. So they got me on Friday. They got me on Saturday. Not Saturdays. Well, Saturdays at 4:00. They got me on Sundays and Thursdays. That's the junior varsity. When you get on the varsity, they'll get you on Friday and Saturday nights, Sunday nights. Right now, I'm on Saturdays at 4:00. I'm at the matinee. I'm at the supper crowd, right? But typically, let's say if you were going to see a notable comedian at a club, they're going to have a 7 and a 9 o'clock. Then they may have, again, for New Year's, there are some adjustments. It may be a late show, but typically, Mike Goodwin is not doing stand-up that late on average. So when you're doing a New Year's Eve service, you probably doing stand-up around 10:30, 11 o'clock. I just would rather not be doing that at that time of night, right? I just would rather be sitting watching somebody else do it. And not only is it late when you're performing, then the service goes until typically well after 12. And when you're a performer, when you're somewhere being hosted by someone, they might have breakfast afterwards. I mean, I've done New Year's Eve services and they've had a breakfast afterwards. So I'm just over at the church. I mean, I could ask somebody, "Hey, could you take me back to the hotel?" It's 1:00 in the morning. And typically the way I roll, my flight is going to be leaving at about 5:00 in the morning. So I skedaddle back to the room. I get about 3 hours sleep, 4 hours sleep, and then I'm making my way to the hotel, making my way downtown, chasing, right? And I'm doing the dance through the airport, whatever day that is. So this week or this year, New Year's Eve is going to be on a Sunday. So Monday, you kind of making your way through the airport. And I'm home because I live in Columbia, South Carolina. We have direct flights on average. So I'm home by 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock that Monday morning. When I've been up all night, I would probably prefer to stay in the bed a little longer and sleep. So it's my preference not to work on New Year's Eve. And I have been able to do that. I just recently talked to a comedian friend of mine, and he was really kind of like, "Whoa, like, why you not out?" And it just solidifies to me, I'm different, man. I just don't do what everybody else do. I just don't do what everybody else do. So this year, I'm looking forward to our New Year's Eve service at my church, where I can leave and get in my bed and see the new year in with my wife, my family, right? Also, I want to talk a little bit about this probate situation, because I've been on the road with that. I beseech you, my dear brother and sister, take care of your business affairs before you transition from this earth. If you have a favorite pair of socks, take a notebook, paper, and write, "Hey, I leave these socks to Johnny Earl," and go get it notarized, get it signed. Get number one, get a will. Like, get the legit stuff. Get your will, your state, your affairs in order. But if you don't do that, just get you a notebook and write the things that you have and who you want them to go to. And notary seems like a good legal document, but I may be incorrect. So y'all can correct me on how to create a legal document that's not necessarily a will. But man, I'm out here attending to the affairs of my father. My father did not attend to the affairs for himself, right? And I was talking to a friend of mine, and he had loss in his family. And I was like, the way it should happen is you a little sad, then you're a little glad. If somebody passed in your life, and I'm talking about that significantly close, like a parent, a grandparent, a spouse, someone that, has a direct connection to you, you should be a little sad. You're not a little sad. You should be grieving. You should be mourning. You should be sad. But then you should be glad at some point because they were diligent in their affairs and they were able to give you something monetarily. So this person was telling me that his grandmother passed, and then they sold the home, and the home sold for double the cost of what she bought it for. I'm sad when I lost my grandma. I'm sad, grieving. Miss my grandma. She's no longer here. I'm a little glad because now we got this significant check that we can split in thirds and halves, or however we do it, right? And I think that should be the case, right? You shouldn't be sad like me. I'm sad. I'm sad that I lost my father and that he's no longer with us. And now I'm sad that I'm taking care of affairs that he did not attend to. So people, take care of your business affairs. Add people to your bank accounts, your insurance account. Like, I'm down bad too. Like, nothing like that. Now, what I will say, my father did leave some finances that were able to cover his funeral, and that will be helpful to my mother and my brother, sister, and I in some degree. Like, we're not in the negative yet because there's still a home that we haven't figured out that part of, but we're not in the negative. So I'm still sad because there's no direction. There's no, this is what my will, this is what I would desire. Because there are things in the house. And we just have no direction, no guidance. And I just think that it's very important for the life that you live at some point. Like, I know things happen to people and they, there can be an accident. One day you're doing very well, and then the next day you're not the person that you once was. Like, when you're doing well, when your mind is sound and you're in a good space, get the stuff taken care of. At least the preliminary. At least start having a template, a outline, or something that gives folks some direction of what you want, how you want your belongings and your affairs to be distributed, and whether you want it donated, you want it gifted. Like, handle your business, people. Handle your business. All right. Let me get out of that. This is the part of the podcast we all been waiting for. This is the Best Advice Ever podcast, and I'm gonna give you what I think is the best advice. Now, this is something that's personal to me. A lot of times I give the advice, and it's things I'm thinking about. I typically, the way that what gave me the motivation for doing this podcast, I wanted to have something in between me doing my stand-up and me doing social media, something a little bit more. And the point of view, the POV, the perspective I try to give is from a dad. I'm a grown man out here, grown black man out here. And I have 2 children. I have a wife, been married for 23 years. I have some significant skin in the game as it relates to marriage and family. So I'll try to speak from a perspective of, if not a father, a mentor, a tour guide, a sage advisor that, hey man, let me see what this brother talking about. And hopefully I provide you with something a little valuable, right? Well, this touches me personally because I just found this book. Somebody gave me a book for Christmas. Incredible book. And I'm not all the way clear on the title. So let me pull the title up because I don't want to be I don't want, because this book led me to another book. And I was like, oh, okay, this book was dope. And there was another book that I knew about, but I never read. So the book that I was gifted is 101 Essays That Will Change the Way You Think by Brianna West, right? So that book was like, yo, incredible. It really, I'm not very far into it. And it's already changing the way that I think, right? But one of the books that mentioned was the book called The Obstacle is the Way. The Obstacle is the Way, which I've seen the cover, and I've might even heard people talk about it. So that book led me to that book. So I went and got the audio version of that book, which a buddy of mine thinks is not reading when you listen to books. So I went and got the audible version of The Obstacle is the Way. And that's the day's best advice ever. The obstacle is the way. And this is personal for me because I'm consistent in being thwarted by obstacles. Like I'm smooth sailing. I got a plan. I strategize. And one obstacle shows up. I'm like, yeah, that's no problem. But when I keep encountering obstacles, I'm discouraged. It throws me off my track. It doesn't. I'm not as, especially within the last probably 10 years, I'm not as resilient as I once was. I was talking to my wife about that recently, and coming from the background that I came from, then when I joined the military, I went to college. Back in my early days, or when I was a younger man, I had no options. I had no options, right? When I joined the Army, I didn't have options. Like, and when I say I didn't have options, I could have joined the Army, I could have joined the Air Force, I could have joined the Marines, I could have joined the Navy, right? I had those options. Or I could have stayed in Camden. Like, but in terms of, I'll go to college, I'll do a gap year and sit out for a year, I'll go work for my uncle at his business, I'll go travel Europe. I didn't have those options. I basically was like, stay in Camden or get out of Camden. Like those were the options. So, okay, get out of Camden. How do you do that? You can go to college for a semester, not have the money, then you're back in Camden. So I'm like, oh, don't want to do that. I wasn't in the case of a place where it's like Job Corps or any of those kind of vocational opportunities. They didn't make sense to me. I'd graduated, I had my degree, so it wasn't, not my degree, my diploma. So it wasn't like I needed to go somewhere to get a GED, learn a trade. So that wasn't a great option. Join the Army. Okay, let's join the Army. So that's what I did. I looked at the choices. I did evaluate the Marines for a minute. But I would join the Army, and I've told a story about they had the GI Bill and Montgomery College Fund, which gave me, at that time I chose 4 years, it gave me $30,000 for college tuition money, which now you can spend that in a semester, definitely in a year. But I had 4 years to serve to get $30,000, which typically I think my degree might have cost me $28,000 when it was all said and done. So I was on the plus side, right? So I had to join the military. So when I went into the Army was hard. Basic training was hard. The drill sergeants were yelling. We had to get up early, and it was all the difficulties. I went to Korea. It was cold. It was hard. I was the youngest, and I was born with a bunch of grown men, and I missed my family. But guess what? I had no other options. Like, if I didn't make it through basic, what was I going to do? Go back to Camden. Now I'm back in the same spot I was in from the start. Like, there was no option. So I could not succeed. I had to succeed. I had to be resilient. I had to persevere. The obstacle was the way. Like, I had to go this direction because there was no other direction. I get the lander. I got to get a degree. I'm not going back to the Army full time. I'm not going back to Camden. So the direction I need to go forward. I can't go back this way. I've been that way. I need to go forward. So there was my Spanish class put me in a spot where I was like, yo, I gotta graduate, man. I gotta make well enough on this exam to get out of this to graduate. I mean, I was in a very dangerous spot. I think I need to go back and get my transcript, but I know at some point, like my last semester in college, I might have had 18 hours. Like I had some ridiculous amount of hours. I was married. I was in ROTC. I was in reserve. Like I just was like, the obstacle is the way. Like I have no other choice but to take 18 hours because this is the amount of hours I need to graduate. Like there's no options. So when I'm in a situation with no options, I'm going to flourish because it's only one thing for me. People talk about the backup plan. I have a backup plan. All my eggs was in one basket. So then I graduated from college and I went to graduate school. Same thing. I had to get that degree. Now, later in life now where I'm like, oh, I want to write a book. I want to start this speakers training. I want to do a TED talk. Those are options. And I'm not persevering. I'm not as resilient. I should have been written a book. And I hate using the word should. I'm writing a book for 10 years now. But I have options. Because I can do stand-up. Like I do stand-up. If I keep doing stand-up and I keep doing stand-up at a high level and doing well, I will be successful. Will I be as successful as I ultimately could be? If I execute these other plans and ideas that I have? I won't. But I have options now. Before. So it's not, I don't think that I'm less resilient. I mean, I need to reevaluate that. I don't know if I'm less resilient. I just didn't have options back then. Maybe if I had options, I may have not gone into the military. If I had the ability to go to college right out of high school and to know that it would be fully funded, I probably would have done that. So I'm not just cyborg, this machine that just achieves, right? But that did set me on a path of like, when you have no options, you must execute, you must deliver, you must win. So now I simply have to remind myself that I have the stuff. So when I'm having a difficulty of being consistent with my podcast or being consistent writing a chapter in my book, whatever, like I got to look back at my past and say, yeah, man, when you didn't have options, you made it happen. Let's make it happen with options. So the obstacle is the way. Again, I want to encourage you that if something's in your way, yeah, go through it. There's a popular thing saying that people say, when you go through hell, keep going. Don't stop. And it's recently happened to me. It happens a lot now, but now the light's on. Like, oh, the obstacle is the way. I got to record content. So I come to this office and I recorded content one day. I was working and I had a set amount of time. And then I went to the bathroom and the pipe didn't burst, but I think there was a frozen line. And so the water wasn't working in the bathroom. And now I got to make calls to some handy folks that work, I have do some work for me. And it took away from the time that I should have been producing my content. I should have been producing the things that I started. But because I didn't give myself any cushion, I'm a little just frustrated. I'm a little upset. Same thing. This past year, I was cooking, man. From May to September, I lost 20 something pounds, man. I was on my game. I was grooving, man. I was getting my body right. I was doing the things, eating a particular way. My pops died, put me in a little bit of a tailspin, 10 pounds back on, bam. Instead of saying, oh, this is very difficult, this is very challenging, don't use food as a comfort. Don't, revert back to poor behaviors and bad habits. The obstacle's the way. Life's gonna throw you some difficulty. Let's figure out how to stay on our track, on our path, on our routine when there's difficulty, when it's easy to not be on. So the obstacle is the way, and that I want to beseech you. I want to admonish. I want you to say that if you are like me, if you're a person like me, and things pop up and it knocks the wind out of your sails and gets you a little discouraged and you kind of slow down your pace, don't do it. Don't slow your pace down. Like, you're on the right path. The obstacle is the way. If something comes and hits you and knocks a little bit of wind out your sail, take a break, regather yourself, but say, oh, I must be getting to where I'm supposed to get, because it's getting harder. It's getting more difficult. Sometimes I have been of the opinion that when I got closer to things and it got harder, it was like, oh, maybe that's not what I should be doing. And that's not correct. So the obstacle is the way. And that's the best advice ever. Trying to do my best to keep this under 30 minutes. So I'm going to share with y'all my top 5 Christmas songs. I did 2 YouTube videos. I would love for y'all to go check them out. I did one, the top 5 Christmas songs that I enjoy singing. Then the top 5 Christmas songs that I love to hear. And I would love to hear, what are your top Christmas songs? We'll start with the ones that I love to hear. I love to hear Silent Night. That's my number 1 song. This Christmas by Donny Hathaway. That's number 2. The Christmas song, Nat King Cole. Now on YouTube, I have a little bit more definition, and I count up. So I don't just give it away. I just gave it away. Number 4 is The Most Wonderful Time of the Year. And number 5 is Christmas in the Highlands, Run DMC, right? And then the songs I like to sing. These are my favorite top 5 songs I like to sing. I came up with more than 5 because I had 2 ties. But the first one is Jingle Bells. I love saying Jingle Bells. Number 2 is Rudolph. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Number 2 is Rudolph. Number 3 is Frosty. Frosty the Snowman. Love singing Frosty the Snowman. Now I had a tie at number 4. Number 4 had Santa Claus is Coming to Town. And then the 12 Days of Christmas. I love singing the 12 Days of Christmas. 5 golden rings. I love the countdown. In cadence, when you march, we used to do this cadence. There's a hole in the bottom of the sea. And so you say that. There's a hole in the bottom of the sea. And then there's like, there's a frog in the bottom of the sea. There's a frog in the hole in the bottom of the sea. I messed it up. But they start with a hole in the bottom of the sea. Oh yeah, there's a hole in the bottom of the sea. There's a log in the bottom of the sea. There's a log in the bottom of the sea. Oh, I gotta go back. I messed that all up. But I like, and you keep adding things. There's a frog on the knot, on the log, and the log in the bottom of the sea. Okay, I'm starting to get it. It's been years. Come on, give me some little grace there, people. But it starts. Yeah, there's a hole in the bottom of the sea. There's a log in the bottom of the sea. There's a log in the hole in the bottom of the sea. There's a knot on the bottom of the sea. There's a knot on the log in the hole in the bottom of the sea. There we go. And so we just keep adding things. There's a frog. There's a frog in the bottom of the sea. There's a frog on the knot and the knot on the log and the hole in the bottom of the sea. All right. I know I had it somewhere in there, but yeah, I love that. I love there's a frog, then there's a fly on the frog, and then there's all that. You just keep adding pieces. That's what I love about the 12 Days of Christmas. And then number 5 is another tie, is Deck the Halls. Fa la 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 la. And Feliz Navidad. Feliz Navidad. So those are my 5. I want to wish you a Merry Christmas. Those are my 5. So what are your top 5 songs to hear and top 5 songs to sing? Man, thank y'all again for checking in. This holiday edition of the Best Advice Ever podcast, man. I do all the things. Like, subscribe, tell people about it. Also, go to MikeGoodwin.com. The Big Dad Energy Tour will be starting back up in Tampa, Florida. January the 6th. It's one of those JV times. I'm a Saturday at 4 o'clock. It's the Tampa Improv or the Tampa Funny Bone. I think they're changing the name. I'll be in Kansas City in February. I'm coming to Marietta, Georgia. We have Nashville. Got Zanies on the list. Huntsville, which is stand up live. I'll be in Zany's in Chicago. It's going down, people. The Big Dad Energy Tour, man. Thank y'all so much for riding with me, and I'll see you next week. Same bat channel, same bat place. You could be anywhere in the world, but you're here with me, and I appreciate it. Peace.